Michael Saylor, MicroStrategy has buying the recent dip, so we can infer your view on whether this was or not a short-term blip. But from what you're hearing, did it have any impact on corporate interest in Bitcoin? Things got pretty hairy there for a while.
Yeah, I think that uh, Bitcoin's one of those stories where if you're only casually interested in it, you just look at the price volatility and the deeper you look at it, the more you think it's like a generational or a decade-long trade. Last week, I think there are pros and cons. Clearly, there's a bit more volatility, and that would scare away weak non-committal players. But there's a ton of institutions that were very enthusiastic about it that decided they wanted to buy it when it was 30,000 around the beginning of the year. And then they watched to their chagrin as it doubled, and they thought, well, it can't double every quarter forever. It's ahead of itself. And then they stopped and they wouldn't buy. And so in circumstances like that, what you want is a dip where they get to get in at a very good price. And so a lot of people think, oh, the price traded down last week. But if you actually look at the exchange volume on Binance, which is probably the most liquid, greatest statistical example we have, on Black Thursday in March of 2020, Binance, that exchange traded 2 billion in an awful day, the worst day of the year by most people's recollections. On the day when, and it was around 5,000. On the day when MicroStrategy announced our purchase, August 10th, that exchange traded $1 billion of Bitcoin in the day. I think that exchange has traded up to 14 or 15 billion dollars of Bitcoin on some days last week and traded $60 billion over the course of 6 days. And it's the bottom line. Bitcoin's up by a factor of 4, liquidity is up by a factor of 5 to 8, even 10. And some institutions bought $60 billion of Bitcoin at a good price last week while someone got panicked over what I view as FUD and they dumped it too cheap. So, I think what you see is that the long-term players are actually pretty happy to have the opportunity to get into this entry point. And if I was looking at it, the number one thing I'd always look at is the price moving on no volume or on a lot of volume? Because that tells you the institutional sentiment.
Michael Saylor, what has most surprised you about the changes? What's the biggest change in the market, in your opinion, since MicroStrategy bought its first Bitcoin?
What surprised me is that we've had a nonstop avalanche of good news. David Rubenstein, who's Jerome Powell's famous boss, endorses crypto. Larry Summers, the Secretary of the Treasury, endorses crypto. Goldman Sachs declares, they endorse Bitcoin, right? They're saying that this is a new asset class. Ray Dalio says he'd rather own Bitcoin than bonds, right? Coinbase comes public. An avalanche of really good news. And then I see the volatility in the market all based upon FUD. And the FUD is, first it was the Chinese are mining too much Bitcoin. And then the FUD was sell Bitcoin. And the second FUD was the Chinese are going to stop mining Bitcoin, sell Bitcoin. And then the FUD was, well, you can't buy Bitcoin in China, sell Bitcoin. And then the FUD was, oh, the Chinese reiterated you can't buy Bitcoin in China, sell Bitcoin. And then the FUD was, oh, IRS says you got to pay your taxes, sell Bitcoin. So, and that's the news cycle, right? So I feel like everything's working out great. I mean, if you'd asked me in August, do you expect to get the legitimization of Bitcoin like this? I wouldn't have in my wildest dreams expected so much good news to come. So I think it's going awesome. Just the market's volatile.
Michael Saylor, many have set off sirens claiming that this is industry centralization that could lead to minor collusion, perhaps network censorship. What's your response to that?
Everybody in that meeting, including Elon, are passionate believers in decentralization. The only reason we had the meeting is because we wanted to ensure the success of a decentralized cryptocurrency, and the source of the decentralization is energy usage. And the existential threat to Bitcoin is concerns over the sustainability of the energy usage. So to the extent that we want to defend Bitcoin we need to manage any concerns, especially from uninformed parties concerning energy usage. We need to make sure the people that are hostile to Bitcoin and hostile to the crypto industry aren't defining those narratives and defining those models and defining those metrics. In the absence of any good information or any response on our part, they will define those models. I think there was this concern. There's some concerns. Oh, it's a secret meeting. If it's a secret meeting, I wouldn't have told millions of people the next day that it was a secret meeting. Trust me. We told everybody in the world that we had a meeting. And if everybody wants to know what happened in the meeting, what happened in the meeting is Elon met the miners. The miners talked about, their approach toward energy and their commitment to sustainability. We asked Elon for his advice about how we might actually manage concerns in the mainstream. We had a detailed conversation about it. We talked about how we might be able to surface better data, and it was very constructive. And then we agreed, to do our best to continue to work toward sustainability and similar goals.
What can be done to improve the understanding and perception of the current status? Can you give us some background on how that came together?
Sure. Well, Elon is a big believer in crypto technology as a force for freedom, and he's a big believer in Bitcoin as a long-term store of value, and he's expressed that sentiment in a number of ways, including taking a multi-billion-dollar position in Bitcoin. I think we all know he expressed a concern that he didn't want to see Bitcoin be the catalyst to bring to life dirty fossil fuels. And that created a bit of a Twitter stir. And that caused Bitcoin to dominate the news cycle all last week across the mainstream media. And I think it became pretty clear that that we have the Bitcoiners, we have a good story, but it's a very complicated story. And we need to find a way to share our story and to educate and get organized. So I think my first thought was there's no point in us tweeting back and forth at each other, because I don't think 280 character Twitters are right ways to educate the public and build consensus.